think this one is pretty top of mind for a lot of people, and especially, last week, even this week, you're hearing a lot about the tech layoffs, and notably Google, Microsoft, and more, kind of like slicing, thousands of employees.
Savagely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I think they were saying between like 3 or 4 companies, there's about 120,000 workers that are laid off.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's a lot of people, guys.
Yeah.
Like, just like 120,000 people is a lot of people. And that's in like North America for the most part.
Yeah.
So this is all these people that now need new jobs and need new situations. But I know we want to have like an overall discussion kind of about it, because when that happens, it's like, what's the reason?
Yeah.
Those questions always come up. Like Microsoft just reported amazing earnings. So like, why are they laying people off?
Well, I don't know, man. Like everyone's always talking about like AI.
Yeah.
Everyone's always talking about like automated technology, automated like employment systems that like, I don't know, are we devaluing people in all of this? Are we taking away or like do they do, innovative technologies like AI?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not in that industry, so this might sound completely ignorant, and it probably does. But
no, I know where you're coming from.
What does that mean? Yeah. Like we're shifting into a workplace or an industry where like technology can almost like run itself.
Yeah.
Which is like crazy to think about. So I don't know. As someone who works in the tech industry, like what's your perspective on this?
It's interesting because there's not one answer. Like partially it's overhiring for some of these companies where they get a new round of funding, they get, really great earnings, and then they just spend on talent to develop a new feature or whatever it is. Markets kind of change, and then they realize, okay, we actually can't sustain this amount that we just hired. We have to slash thousands of people. That's part of it.
Is that poor planning though?
It's poor planning, 100%.
Yeah,
but the leadership isn't going to take the hit. It's the employees they hired, right?
Totally.
As well as like product maturity, because if you think of like Microsoft, you think of Google, like they can sustain themselves, like you said, with these automated tools for the most part. Like they don't need 100,000 employees.
Yeah.
So they kind of get to that point where they're like, we can work on autopilot and still exist and still perform well. Let's trim the fat.
Yeah.
That's what happens, right? As well as investor and shareholder pressure. So because these companies need to continuously post and grow, like post new earnings reports and profit and things like that, you got investors. Like there's this investor at Google. Oh my God, he's trending right now because he emailed the CEO. He's one of their prominent shareholders. And he's like, sorry to hear about the layoffs. This is all public. Like they publicized the email. Sorry to hear about the layoffs, but he's basically saying it's not enough. Like you laid off 12,000 people, but I think we can lay off more. Essentially is what he's saying in this long email.
Jesus.
This guy's worth like $8-9 billion. And it's like,
damn, you're not even looking at the people at that point.
You're so out of touch at that point. You're just saying you want the stock price to raise so then you can earn more money as a shareholder. So it's like a multitude of all these different reasons that ends up with these tech companies laying off thousands of people, as well as it's also like, hey, Malick owns Twitter. I own Facebook. I see Malick is laying off a bunch of people. Maybe I should look into also competing with him and laying off a bunch of people.
Sure.
And it's like, there's not much sense in that.
Yeah. It's terrible when people are at the expense.
Man. Yeah.
When people are at the expense of like a business plan or anything like that.
Yeah.
It makes it very difficult for, I would assume, like new people wanting to get into tech, right?
100%.
And tech is like one example, but I would say like the industry that's probably boomed the most in the last few years.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, I'm going to assume that it's the tech industry,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Because like during the pandemic, like technology was like so much more important than it ever was. So now we've gotten to a point where like thousands and thousands and thousands of people are like getting into tech and tech-based jobs. Kind of reminds me, you were talking about this like TikTok like trend thing right
day
before.
In the life,
day in the life of like a tech UX designer or engineer or product manager or something like that.
They make it seem so attractive.
Yeah.
Like they're not working whatsoever, but they're making $200K plus a year. So like obviously watching that, you're going to be like, how do I do what they're doing?
Right.
And you don't really look into, how unstable a lot of these companies are.
Yeah.
Right? Like, sure, you'll get a severance package of 3 months, sure, but like, is that guaranteed you're going to find a job within 3 months when 120,000 people are now also looking for, So it's tricky, man. The thing is, what I would tell people is like, sure, Meta, Amazon, these are great companies, but like, you don't need to work at those companies to make good money in tech.
Yeah.
Like, there's a tech department in a grocery company or a beauty company or a sports company. Like, you can look elsewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're a bit more stable than these massive startup or mid-size,
Totally.
software companies.
What I think might be really interesting about, 120,000 people. Let's just assume that's the number today.
Yeah.
Like, think of how many people that is, and think about how many intelligent, smart, innovative people are in that group who can apply their knowledge to, a different industry or something.
Yep.
But think of how many companies could come out of something like that too, right?
Yeah,
like
that's true.
I feel like in working in sports and entertainment, like the tech side of things, the digital side of things, I'd say is still very much in its infancy, right?
Yeah.
And technology is totally changing the game. Like, technology is totally changing everything in sports, right? From how we keep track of stats, how we monitor player performance.
Good.
Yeah, it's actually really cool.
Really
like
good.
Microsoft and like AWS, like all of these like massive tech companies are like innovating in sports, and I think that's the interesting part about it. Because to your point earlier, like people are like, okay, I want to work in tech. I'm going to work for Meta. I'm going to work for Google. I'm going to work for Amazon. Any of these like big companies, but when you think about, everything else that exists in the life that you live, auto, for example, is another one.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Like, it would be so cool to like see how this influences like other industries outside of those like big tech companies that you always hear about. I know I mentioned AWS in sport, but like,
how we're going to see the bounce back of this, like in maybe a year or a couple of years from now,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So it's like,
oh my God.
It's really interesting. So, I mean, shout outs to like, hopefully the people who are, in these positions where they've been laid off can, find another job soon, or use that to like fuel like another industry or passion for another industry. Because 100%. I feel like there's like so much within that doesn't, so much brain power that doesn't need to be applied to fucking Facebook or Mark Zuckerberg, any of those guys. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
It's like you might see another new innovation come out of something like this. So it's like, again, as someone who's not affected by any of this, like I'm saying, see the positive in the negative without having lost my job. So it's easy for me to say that, but like, hopefully that there's a positive side on the other end for these people. And, it's unfortunate that they're in this position right now.
They got to go through that because like we've talked a lot about how, your employer's best interest is like themselves often, right? And the leadership team. Like we look at Google, for example, I sent you a tweet about it, but you're working one day, so you're working on Monday. They send an email Tuesday morning. If you didn't read that email and you went into the office, you find out your key card no longer works. And that's how people found out they were laid off.
Ugh.
And it's like,
heartless.
The communication has to be better. People, because there's just so many that they just treat them like they're nothing.
Like sheep.
Yeah. On to the next, So we need to treat people as humans. And, I'm not an employer. I'm not an owner of a software company, but you're hiring people. You need to treat them as people.
Yeah, it's weird because, you know what? We're in this analogy.
Yeah.
We're talking about AI replacing people. We're talking about like technology replacing like human interaction in the workplace.
Yeah.
Humanity in the workplace, let's call it. Isn't this just another form of that?
Literally.
Like doesn't it feel like, okay, well we're just gonna cut this, like the guy, the shareholder.
Yeah.
He was like, well, we can probably cut this many more people. And it's like, you are treating people like robots.
It's dollars and cents to you, that's it.
And your entire industry is about creating robots that do work for you.
We're already in it, man.
You know what I mean?
We're already in it.
It's crazy.
So we'll see how things go. But I like your outlook of like, what's the bounce back from this,
Yeah, and hopefully it's something good.
Hopefully, yeah.
You know what I mean? I hope people use that towards good. But
straight up, let's move on.
Let's jump on. This is a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And